Okay, so we left off at growth hormone, and let's explain how growth hormone works on your muscles and bones. So we know the anterior pituitary gland is going to secrete growth hormone. So here's my gland. It's going to secrete growth hormone, but the first target isn't exactly muscles and bones. It's going to reach the liver first, and it does so by the circulatory system. So there is my part of my circulatory system. Growth hormone gets into your blood system. Now it reaches your liver. So here is the liver. Now the liver got the command to do something. And that something is it's going to create another hormone called insulin-like growth factor. Or we can call this IGF. So that's the hormone that's being produced and secreted by the liver. Now we have IGF. Now this hormone is the one that goes to your muscles and bones. So let's illustrate that. So here would be here's a bone. And kind of at the edges of your bone on each side, you have cartilage. And the cartilage cells, we call them chondrocytes. And IGF actually stimulates the growth. So IGF stimulates the growth and development of cartilage cells called chondrocytes. So that's how growth hormone works on bone. For muscles, let me draw some skeletal muscle here with its striations. And then let's fill some of this in, make it look nice. So here is skeletal muscle. And IGF has a similar effect. It's going to stimulate the growth and the development of the precursor muscle cells. We call them myoblasts. So these are precursor muscle cells. These guys are precursor muscle cells. So this is how growth hormone works. Okay, but what if you have too much growth hormone or not enough growth hormone? So diseases, we can call them pathologies of growth hormone. Let's discuss case one. When you have too much growth hormone as a child growing up. So the timing is important. While the growth plates in your bones are still open, we can have a different effect. So too much as a kid leads to a condition called gigantism. Second case, if you have too much, but your growth plates are already closed up as an adult, too much as an adult, you'll have a condition known as acromegaly. And this translates to large extremities. So fingertips, large extremities. Large extremities. And the last case is you have not enough growth hormone. You will develop a condition known as dwarfism. So for gigantism, it may sound cool that you'll be large, have large bones and muscles, but this actually isn't the case. So you have many health complications. You need a strong enough heart to support sending blood flow all the way to your head, your brain, your extremities, among other problems. So having this condition can lead to an early death. For the man in the picture below, he only lived about 22 years. His body couldn't support the large tissue. For acromegaly, the second case, you can notice the swelling of the tissue, and it also comes with cardiac complications, just like for gigantism. And then for dwarfism, you can notice that people with this condition, won't be as tall as normal, or obviously those with gigantism. So we just discussed 7 hormones, and if you put them together, they can spell out this word flat peg. So we had follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. We had luteinizing hormone. We had adrenocorticotropic hormone. The P was for prolactin. Then we had endorphins. And then we had growth hormone. These first 4, I missed thyroid stimulating hormone. Let's see if I can shift this down. Sweet. Okay, so I missed thyroid stimulating hormone. So now these first 4, we call them tropic hormones. Tropic because their target is another endocrine gland. Not the final target tissue itself, but another endocrine gland. So it's going to target another endocrine gland. And this is in relation to the direct hormones, these guys. The direct hormones, they target the tissue directly. So I guess target final tissue directly. Directly for direct. Okay, that's it for the anterior pituitary gland. Now what about the posterior? So the other one. So let me just redraw my pituitary gland. Here's the back lobe, the posterior lobe, and here would be the anterior. So anterior pituitary gland. This is posterior pituitary gland. Up here is your hypothalamus. Hypothalamus. Okay. I told you guys to remember that there's a direct connection from the hypothalamus to the posterior, and this guy here was the pituitary stalk. This is important because the hormones released by the posterior are actually from the hypothalamus. They're made and they're sent to the posterior just for storage until they're secreted. So they're produced by the hypothalamus and they're simply stored and released from the posterior. And you can see this direct connection by the pituitary stalk. These 2 hormones, the first one is something called oxytocin. Oxytocin. So one target for oxytocin is, again, the female's mammary glands, which is in breast tissue. And this causes something known as milk ejection. Not production, milk ejection. This is also known as milk letdown when we get stimulus from the infant. And again, we only want this after pregnancy. After childbirth. Okay, the second target for oxytocin also involves female reproduction. This is going to go to the smooth muscle in the uterus, the endometrial lining, smooth muscle in the uterus. And this is going to cause the smooth muscle to contract to facilitate childbirth. Okay. So again, these 2 hormones are made in the hypothalamus, but simply sent and released from the posterior pituitary gland. Okay. So now, we know that the hypothalamus directly commands the posterior, but how does it command the anterior pituitary gland? So how is this connection going to happen? And the answer is with the hypophyseal portal system. Before we get into the hypophyseal portal system, I wanted to mention the second hormone produced by the hypothalamus and secreted by the posterior pituitary gland. The second hormone is called anti-diuretic hormone. Anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, so what does this hormone do? Well, let's take the word diuretic first. We're just going to concern ourselves with this word right now. Diuretic, this makes you urinate more. Diuretics make you urinate more. The two common examples of diuretics, one is alcohol, the other one is caffeine. So this is diuretics. They make you pee more. So if I were to attach the prefix anti, which means I will pee less. Antidiuretics will make you urinate less, or you save up more water. Okay, so that's what antidiuretic hormone does. This is commonly abbreviated to ADH. This actually goes to the collecting duct. And hopefully you remember this is part of the nephron. And nephrons are the functional unit of a kidney. So collecting duct, nephron, and kidney. What ADH does is it creates extra water channels in this collecting duct. So if this was my collecting duct, this green arrow is filtrate. This is all eventually going to become urine, pretty much urine at this point. But ADH adds these extra water channels. And since we dip down into the medulla is heavy in solutes, which means it's going to attract water. So there's my solute heavy medulla. And with these extra water channels created by ADH, we're going to have more water reabsorption. Okay, so let's see. Let's see what happened. We have more water reabsorption. This basically means we have less urine volume or more concentrated urine, which means you will urinate less. So based on the environment, if it's hot outside or you need to save water for whatever reason, you can expect ADH to be at play. Okay, now on to the hypophyseal portal system. And again, I'm going to redraw my hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So here's my posterior lobe. Then here is my anterior lobe. I said before the hypothalamus directly commands the posterior via this bridge here. This is the pituitary stalk. Pituitary stalk. How the hypothalamus commands the anterior lobe is through this capillary system. So the hormones produced by the hypothalamus can travel through this capillary system to reach the anterior pituitary gland, like so. So it gets into circulation, this command from the hypothalamus gets into circulation, and this is how it commands the anterior lobe to have an effect and release those hormones that we've discussed before. Okay, pituitary stalk. Again, this region up here, this is the hypothalamus. This here is the posterior pituitary gland. And this guy here was the anterior pituitary gland. I will finish in the next video.